Hello everyone and welcome to the Post-MacTaggart interview. I'm sure many, if not all of us, were in the MacTaggart lecture yesterday and absolutely captivated and held the room. An extraordinary story by an extraordinary storyteller, delivering a really fresh and challenging perspective to the whole industry. So I'm not going to waste any more time and I want to get talking right now to my guest, the phenomenal Michaela Coel. Welcome, Michaela.
Thanks.
How are you doing? You all right?
Closer. Why are we so far apart? Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, it's all right. You sit on my lap.
I know, yeah.
So, how are you feeling this morning? How are you feeling about the lecture yesterday? I know you said at the very beginning you were quite nervous.
Oh, yeah.
Feel it went well? Happy?
Oh, really happy.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just like, I was able to read, and do it, which is great.
Yeah. There's no relief like having done it.
Yes. Yeah. A bit like how I described my babies. This was like a little mini baby. Mm-hmm. It's done. It's out. So.
But I think the response was extraordinary, and I talked to a few people afterwards, and the feedback, and just the sort of sense that this was quite a fresh and exciting MacTaggart lecture that from a new voice, from someone who a very powerful and unique voice. That's you I'm talking about. But I didn't go into the wrong one, I'm pretty sure. But there was lots and lots in there, so much in there. It was so dense with material and content and ideas and perspective. There was one line of many that really stood out to me, though, which was just sort of slipped in there, where you were talking about after the huge success of the first series of Chewing Gum, and you had really arrived in the TV scene. People were taking notice, you were winning awards, you were going to parties, and you very candidly said that you were enjoying a little bit of, cocaine, that you were very candidly admitted. And you had a moment, a small sort of still voice of calm that asked yourself, is this where I thought I'd be? If I'd asked myself 5 years ago, is this where I thought I'd be? And there was just sort of a bleak, small word, which was just no. And I was actually very struck by that. It was a weirdly sort of moving moment, and then you moved off from that quite quickly. And I just wondered if we could use this opportunity to just expand on that a bit, because I think many people would assume that that would be a moment where you would just be so overjoyed and excited all the time that you wouldn't experience a sort of slightly bleak moment like that. So
yes.
Why was that?
Well, I almost feel lucky that my ex, I bumped into him and he said that, because it allowed me to think about that, which I think sometimes we're pumped with so much parties, press night, cocktails, cocaine, that we don't get to sit down and go, are you okay? How are you feeling right now? Is this what you want to do with your life? Like, what's the future? Doesn't look very good. And that silence became very important to me, because it allowed me to redirect my life into a place I felt more comfortable going in,
Well, the thing is, when you describe a story like yours, which is powering through so hard and working so hard and so many obstacles, and then you did your Chewing Gum Dreams live show, and then it felt like it was almost constant from then on, and then the work of putting together a show like Chewing Gum for TV and writing it, performing it, being involved on every level of the production, that level of constant noise, and it's amazing that you found that moment of quiet so early, because many people don't. Many people just keep on going. How do you think, is there something in your background or in your nature that you think allows you to find those moments of quiet for yourself?
I mean, what could I really, if I had to really think about what that would be? And although I'm not a Christian anymore, it would probably have something to do with that kind of, maybe to do with praying. Mm-hmm. Then once you remove the Bible thing, you're just sitting there. Mm-hmm. So you know what I mean? Once you're not like thinking for myself.
Don't tell the Archbishop of Canterbury.
No. I like the new guy as well, though. I'm like, I like this new one. But it may be that kind of habit of being alone and praying. Once the kind of person you're praying to is removed and you're now talking to yourself.
Yes.
Is maybe what began that kind of
I mean, we share sort of this religious background.
Yes.
I have my evangelical years as well, but and one of the things that I learnt during that time in studying religion was people often find that people who are religious in some respects have very good mental health because of the praying, and praying is a form of meditation, and so and that's all kind of plays into the mindfulness and all those things that are very hot topics now. But it is a noisy industry, it's a busy industry, and people, if you're hot and you're at the top of your game like you are now, people will find ways to keep you busy.
Yes, and I think not just being a person on TV, it goes to the producers, to the head of channels, to any human. There's so much noise, and it's like almost the more responsibilities you have, the less time you have to be responsible for yourself, and ask yourself how you're doing. Are you okay? How do you feel? What are the things you believe you should be? Are you doing them? Because there's so much, you've got too many things to do. This person's calling from this person's calling this, and you need to carve out time, just to be with yourself.
And do you find that there's a certain creative spirit or temperament that allows you the flexibility to update? I mean, one of the most striking things about the lecture was in the final section talking about where you felt wrong and admitting that you were wrong, and particularly in the storyline involving the Malaysian actress.
Yeah.
And do you think that there's a particular facet to the creative character that hopefully allows you to update and adapt and to be flexible in that way?
I don't know if it's to do with being a creative, because in fact, when I said update beliefs, that was actually also something I got from one of Colin Wright's books, a guy I referenced at the end. I just think being curious about yourself, about other people's perspectives, and asking why there's a difference in perspectives. Curiosity. Maybe creatives are by nature a little bit, I don't even know if I think that. I think everyone should be curious, and not everybody is. It's not something I was taught in school. I was taught in school to memorize your AQA questions or whatever, and I literally did, like, word for word, memorize the AQA books. But I wasn't taught to really think about what was going on. And I think nobody gets to be as curious as they should be allowed to be.
But one of the privileges of writing, of being a writer, is part of the job is to empathise and see other people's perspectives. Otherwise, you'd just endlessly be writing monologues.
Yes, and
which is fun, but
well, yes, but yeah. And then here's the thing: I did write and create perspectives, and yet someone called and said, "No, the way you did my character was wrong." So I am a creative, but I still got that wrong. So it's more about being willing to be wrong. And I think that goes beyond being a creative. That goes into being a human.
Yes.
Yeah.
But some people's jobs, particularly in this industry or in any industry, when you reach a very high exec level, almost your life and your time and your outlook gets narrower and narrower.
Yes.
And responsibility on your shoulders.
Yeah.
The room to play, to be curious, to be free, to have time to empathise or meditate or have quiet time, the silence gets narrower and narrower. When you talked about reaching out to people ahead of writing your lecture to talk to them about the transparency, to try and gain transparency about people, and just if you could just expand a little bit on what you found, because I think that's really interesting that you reached out to people in the industry and found that there was some difficulty or resistance initially to being transparent or self-aware in that way.
Yeah, I think, I was definitely the same for a long time. You don't know why you shouldn't talk about things, but you just don't talk about them. And I think we are curious about things, but some things. And I want to be curious about everything. I want to learn to be curious about everything. So I think even if you have a very, very busy job, even if you just have 5 minutes, wake up 5 minutes earlier to just think, particularly about the things that the things that you staunchly don't agree with, just to ask yourself why, and then why again, and then, well, why, and sometimes that might lead to an updated belief or curiosity. And
curiosity was a word that you've used a lot, and but also the courage to then act on what you find is that's quite important to you.
It is. Maybe that's a part of like the whole Jesus thing, you know, maybe, you know, I'm like, what is it that I loved so much? And it could be, you know, look, I'm not a Christian, I'm here like talking about Jesus. I'm like, he would, you know, go into synagogues and turn over tables like, no, that's wrong.
Just leave this one here though for now.
No, this is right. This is nice. This is a nice environment. But I think, you know, yeah, we have, it sounds so like wanky, but we really do have one life, and I'm just like, what do I have to lose? Only my life, which I'm gonna lose anyway. Yeah. We're all gonna lose it. So
yeah. Hopefully not this afternoon.
Yeah, hopefully not this afternoon, but hey, so somebody will in the world this afternoon, you know, it's like, I feel it's on my mind so much that I would rather just kind of be transparent, and I feel like it leads to more things, like even talking to the lady in the cast I mentioned from yesterday, the white lady who was like, I felt really weird there too, you know, and talking and then going, oh my God, like, wow, then you learn something new. You learn that actually most of us are the same, you know, like, and that's only being curious really has allowed me to kind of discover that.
You talk about your religious background and the stories in the Bible and the stories that captivated you, and that and storytelling is obviously your job, your vocation. And being a misfit and that sort of playing into being a storyteller, the desire to tell stories, putting that above profit or promotion. I think a lot of writers that I've read about can recall some time or moment or period of time in their childhood where they almost had started to have a consciousness of that, of their particular love of stories, or even that the desire to tell stories was inside them. And you talk about your childhood friends and your friends, the girls that you were at school with, and that happy time. Did you have that moment as a child? Do you remember realising that you wanted to tell stories?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I really liked, because I was a poet first, and I really liked John Keats, and we'd learn about him in my GCSEs. And I remember thinking, oh, I like this one, you know, probably because it allowed for curiosity, you know, like, what does this mean? You know, what does this line, what does this stuff mean? So I could probably trace it back to then.
And when you said sort of like calls unto like, did you have an immediate sense of having figured out that you wanted to emulate your favourite storytellers and then tell stories yourselves?
Oh, no. So I became a Christian at like 17 or 18 and started reading the Bible, and then I read Psalms, and then I was like, I like these Psalms. Then I wrote a poem which was actually called I Am Beautiful, and it was about encouraging people to be aware of their beauty, not because of anything they look like. I was a Christian, so because, you know, you're made by God and you're beautifully and wonderfully made. That was me becoming a writer, and then I went into, there was a Christian pub in Ealing. That's the only pub I'd been to. It was a Christian pub. There's a Christian pub called West Beginnings in Ealing. And I went there. I went there with had my Bible and I had my poem, and I went into this pub, and I went up to the dudes that owned the pub and I said, I would like to read a poem. And they said, no.
That's something that...
And as I walked away...
It wasn't something they did regularly in the pub.
No. Okay. And, you know, I walked away, and then they went, wait, come on. Let him hear the first few lines. I'm trying to remember what they were now. Come on.
Well, perhaps they'll
But then they let me do it. They
let you read the poem?
Yeah. They let me stand there and read the fucking poem.
I adore this image more than you can possibly say.
Yeah, that was honestly by myself. I just went there. I'm from East London. I went all the way to West, never South, but I went to West. I went to West.
I think that's wise, though, to try and get geographically as far away as possible if you're going to do that, in case your poem's shit.
You know what I mean? I was like, I'm going to travel to the end of the Red Line, Central Line. I'm going to go all the way there, just in case I want to bury this whole thing. I'm going to go to West London.
That's brilliant. And what do you remember the response in the room? I mean, was anyone in there?
Well, no, so it was great. No, there were people there, and I think they liked it, but I know for sure at least one person did, because they said, that was good, can I get your number? And I gave them my number, and then they invited me to do a poem somewhere else. And then I ended up, there'd be like dance shows, and in the middle there'd be like, and here's a poet, as a break for the dance. And so I would just come on and like do some poetry. Seriously. And then I was like, in universities, SOAS, just like the poets here, it's really weird. Because also, I didn't go lectures, but suddenly I was in SOAS as a poet. And a director saw me do a poem at a dance show and said, you should think about acting. And then I was an actor. And then I started writing, because you read plays, and...
Do you still have these poems? I mean, could they be published as a small volume?
Basically all these things are like, even my poems, they're all on, you can find a bunch of them on YouTube. And even my blogs, I refuse to take anything down, because I like to leave, forms of myself available for people to find, to see that everybody has the right to change. Everybody has the right to evolve. So I'm like, you can still see it now. It's still there. Go read them.
I think that's great. I mean, there are a lot of teenagers that write poems that would like to probably have burnt them. So I think it's very...
But more like the blogs, my blogs and stuff, you can read how you listen to me now, and you read blogs I wrote, which there's an essence of myself, but I look at, I'm like, oh, she was so cute and naive, but I'm like, we should be able to see that. We don't just suddenly, appear, and in 10 years' time, I'm going to be completely different to the way I am now, and I'm like, that should be a process we are all allowed to go on, without shame.
But I think that's very artistically generous of you as well, because you're showing your evolution as an artist. And also to be able to preserve digitally that body of work. I mean, that's a relatively new thing.
Absolutely.
And to be able to put that out there, and that we've all now got a kind of footprint, whether we like it or not, even if it's just emails. A friend of mine, a comedian, Richard Herring, said just something quite interesting on Twitter the other day about how he'd found a bunch of his old letters from when he was a teenager. But what was so unusual for him now was that he doesn't have his response. He doesn't have his side. He's only got the letters he got sent back. Whereas we're actually not used to that now. We have emails, because what we've got on emails is both sides of the story forever. And he was saying some of the letters seem very, very emotional and full of something terribly important, and he has no recollection of what it was, what he said in his letter, like nothing.
Oh my God.
Which that's a real brave new world thing, is that we can preserve digitally our body of work. We can see our evolution. We can see both sides of a conversation on email forever. And are you excited by this technology and the future it may hold? Or
I think I am. I think like with any kind of period of evolving, there's like, even thinking of like fucking growing your teeth, it's uncomfortable. There's a little bit of, oh, this is an adjustment. And I think that's what we're in the middle of with social media but I do believe that what it has allowed for is transparency. And I imagine a future, probably none of us are going to be here, where actually we go through the difficult period where we are, we need to think about the implications of technology on our mental health. But once we are aware of those things, we can use these things without risking ourselves and our, health. So I am excited by it,
And even, from a philosophical point of view, that is all true. But even from a practical point of view, the actual hardware is affordable. I mean, another comedian, Stuart Lee, was saying, that he gets cross about people videoing his gigs. You know, whatever we think about that, he's sort of resistant to the technology in some respects, but he sort of makes the point where he says, look, you've now got in your pocket something that 15 years ago would have cost about £10,000. Yes. You have a broadcast quality camera in your pocket, and it's cost you nothing with a phone contract. You know, please don't assume that I can necessarily deal with that in my creative journey. But on the flip side, it means that it is emancipating creatives in some respect, because anyone that can harness that technology, it now doesn't need to wait for permission in the traditional sense of, yes, this commissioner, I have to wait for this commissioner to commission me so that they will allow me to put my work on television.
Yes, yeah, and I think, and I think the future, I imagine, I don't know much about like hardware, but I do know that things, even when you think of like illegal streaming and downloading, that through, you know, I'm sure Hollywood and, you know, the big kind of corporations are pushing for technology to find a way that we can no longer illegally stream or download things and etc. And through that, I think artists will be able to find a way to make work and have agency in their work and be in control of their work. And once there's transparency about, so for example, now young people put things on, make amazing work and put it on Instagram and social media. And I think once there's transparency in terms of what that does for whoever runs these platforms, a way will be found so that they are able to do it and feel that there was transparency around all of it.
And transparency was a major theme of your lecture, and obviously something that is very, very important to you. But do you find in English culture or British culture that we've all grown up in, there's sometimes a temperamental resistance or a cultural or professional resistance to it, that people are just uncomfortable with it, but they don't necessarily know why?
Yeah, you know, it's quite new for me, really, this whole transparency thing. It's really quite new. I haven't always been like this. It's something that maybe this year, the last kind of 2 years, you know, from when we first met, probably the last 2 years. Yeah, I've always been quite a...
I should just clarify, that sounded a bit ominous.
Yeah.
We didn't meet in prison.
Yeah, no.
We went on a road trip for Comic Release for 2 weeks. We drove from Nairobi into Uganda, didn't we? Well, some of us drove. I think you drove for 9 consecutive minutes.
Yes, because my driving is just not healthy for anyone.
Well, you know.
I tried, and then everyone was like, you know what, let's just stop the cars.
You know what,
Michaela, why don't you try the passenger seat? What do you think? And I'm like, that's a great idea.
Michaela,
I think that's great.
Let's make you the DJ.
Yes, I'm like, I'm good with music. So I'll do the tunes. Yeah.
And Reggie will do the drums.
Exactly.
But yes, so just elaborate on that a little bit if you can, like what it was that triggered that or prompted that, this new curiosity and interest in transparency in the last couple of years. No particular one thing.
I don't know. I mean, it could be writing.
Yeah.
It really could.
Was it partly to do, and you talked about this in your lecture, the desire to be more in control and in charge of your babies, of your stories, that you sort of were encountering things of, you know, I mean, when I write TV and you have a vague sense of, don't write nighttime scenes. You know, I remember writing sketches at dinner and it would be like, could this be lunch? You know, then we won't have to black out all the windows or pay for actors in the night. You know, you sort of start to get a sense of what's going to cost people a lot of money to make.
Yes, and you want to know.
Necessary, and you want to know what's in the budgets.
So you know how to make the show easy for everyone. You know, if you don't know, it's like I could be writing a show where then a jet plane comes and then we go to Spain and then, you know, somewhere else, and then they're like, well, we have this much for the budget. It's like, if you know, limitations are great. Yeah. So it's like, oh, now that I know we have this much, I can make this amazing story that costs us like this much. But if you don't share everything,
And you evolve, I think, as a writer and as a collaborator, because TV is a naturally collaborative process. You can't do it all on your own.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember something particularly that illustrates what you're saying, was that when I wrote a sketch about Charlotte Church drinking a drink called Cheeky Fanta, and I just put very quickly, I didn't even think about it, I put, the layers of the drink are purple, red, orange, and then carried on writing the sketch. And a while later, when we were in production, I went down into where the art department, and they seemed a bit stressed. And I said, "What are you doing?" They said, we spent about 3 days trying to find a way to layer up the drink, so that it's real and you can drink it, but they're in layers." And I just thought, oh shit. I said, please, like, that could so easily be cut. I said, if you... That is not the joke or the focus. Yeah. I literally
but that's
put that.
amazing, though, that they were trying to do their job so much.
And I said, please, before you do this again, come and tell me that, and then I'm sure 9 times out of 10 we'll just cut it. And you realise the power you have as a writer. Sometimes you don't even know yourself, because everyone is trying to please you to some extent.
Working on this script that you've made, you know.
And that's wonderful, because they're treating it as precious.
Yes.
But if the production or the producer doesn't involve the writer properly in the process with this transparency, then how are you ever supposed to know or help?
How do we learn? Yeah, which is, you know, what I said yesterday. You know, if we aren't taught by the people that know, how do we find out?
I mean, and there are many writers who go on to be part of the producing team, particularly, I think in the States it seems like a very prevalent thing. I mean, sometimes writers are just credited as producers and not even writers. But is that something you have grown more interested in, is producing your own work? I think you've even mentioned when we were out in Kenya about directing and all of that, that level of taking charge of the whole world that you've created, so that it is wholly your vision. I mean, you really are an auteur in that sense. Is that something that excites you?
Yeah. And, you know, only this year I do have a production company now, but it's not because I want to build an empire from it, you know, it's because I want to look after my children. And that's it, then nothing goes beyond that. And I think it's, it's a way to kind of try to create a transparent space between the people you're working with, you know, who also want transparency. You know, I've had to now learn to seek out people who are willing to be transparent, and that often comes at the risk of, you know, losing everything. Yes. But I don't mind. Yes. Because I would rather have transparency.
I think once you find a group of people that you can really trust, you know, you don't let those people go, I think. And a lot of writers, you know, if you're lucky enough, you find a producer who becomes your producer, who really understands you, or a director, and then it becomes the most, you know, the glorious collaboration that can happen then.
But also just like, read through everything, man. You know, so and that's where that's how you learn to trust. You have to read through everything. And we're so busy, you know, writing imaginary worlds that takes so much time and mental energy that we sometimes disregard our contracts and our learning and our, you know, I'm like, oh, maybe there's, even if you don't want to be a producer, maybe there's like a book online called Producing for Dummies, you know, I had my book, what did I buy? Script Writing for Dummies when I was first like writing, because I don't know what I'm doing. So it's just to know, I
think that is part of the responsibility, and I think that there is this notion that artists and creative people are flighty and difficult and you know, shouldn't have too much of a dose of reality or something, and I think that does everyone a disservice, because, you know, I think of myself now as a small business called Katy Brand.
That's right, girl.
And I need to keep abreast of every part of it, and that we have a question actually that plays into this a bit, that's just come up about what you mentioned in your lecture, where you became aware when you had a deal offered to you of a huge amount of money, that they were also going to try and take some of the copyright or the ownership, or all of it. And how does it, is that a difficult thing for you to do, to take that? Was that very hard for you to take that amount of control back and to say no to that amount of money?
Well, the first thing I asked was why do you want to take all of the copyright? But just because I want transparency. Yeah. And when the answer is, that's just not the way it is, I'm already out. Like, that doesn't sound like a good answer to me.
No.
You know, it sounds cloudy.
Yes.
Which means I don't trust.
But bizarre that somebody, it seems to be a strangely casual attitude to something that you have created, that you would just give it away, or this sense that not everything.
So much because creatives, you know, bless us, we want to share. That's the reason why we're doing this. And when someone gives you the opportunity to share, because that's your goal, sometimes you just take it. But I've learned now to go, what are the terms and what are the conditions, and why is that the way it is? Just checking. And when there's not answers, sometimes there's a great answer at the end and you go, oh, okay, cool. But when the answer is, that's the way it is, or
there's sometimes a pervasive view in this business and lots of businesses, which is everyone has their price, and turning away from $1 million. Did you find that hard, or had you not even thought of it as yours?
Yeah, I hadn't. I mean, I don't care. Yeah, no.
And that's very free. I mean, the level of control you can then exert over what you do and don't do, because you just don't care about that amount of money. I mean, it's one piece of advice someone gave me once, which I have not followed at all, unfortunately, which is keep your overheads low.
I don't even know what that means.
Well, as in, the costs you have of running yourself, whether it's your mortgage, whether it's the size of the house that you buy, how good a car you have, you know, the overheads, the running costs of your life.
So I was told the same thing many years ago, back when I was a Christian, by a guy who said to me, if your money expands, do not expand your lifestyle. So it's good to, my personal thing, and I learned more and more, you know. I remember at one point my closet was just filled with clothes, Topshop, Urban Outfitters, And I just was like, oh, let me just give this to a charity, because why do I need all these clothes? You know, like, this is a lot of clothes for one person. And so then just kind of bringing everything down means there's like a bit more freedom to make the choices you want to make when you realise you don't need certain things, you know. I think for me, you know, and I think it's important to think about what we feel we need and why.
Yes. And that stripping back, that again, you know, it's so interesting that you laid this foundation stone of religious belief early, even though you've walked away from it to some extent, that sort of asceticism and that almost sort of monk-like existence, that if you bring everything right down to its simplest point, you can then focus everything on the ideas and the creativity, and that's led you to this creative honesty. We've had this question just pop in here about your creative honesty and the way you want to challenge people and challenge yourself. Is that, the question asked, is that natural to you, or do you find you have to work at it?
Oh, I have to work at it.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, every day. I think I have to keep checking with myself. I think it should never. The minute it feels like something you don't have to work at, it's probably you're probably not doing it anymore. Yeah.
And that. I mean, that honesty and the honesty and the...
Yes, okay, yes, that's
but also
hard.
telling the truth. I think that was something that was very prevalent in your lecture, that I think gave that very electric atmosphere in the room, and you know, that's pin drop silence on several occasions, and possibly a few little squeaky bum moments for a few people in the audience. We don't know.
I can't hear from that far away. I'm always like, you can never gauge what anyone. You're just there, kind of.
But yeah, there was
to the girl in the front row I can see, you know.
Yeah, that's right. Turn the lights.
Yeah.
But that sense of not being deliberately provocative, but not shying away from it either, of telling that truth, even if it feels uncomfortable.
Yeah.
When you were writing the lecture itself, because it was a challenging lecture and there were a few gasps in the room at various points, in a good way, but what is that something you felt nervous of particularly, or that you intended to do, or that you worked at to be that honest?
Yeah, probably worked at in terms of years, in terms of learning to even say no, you know, learning to like say no, or to, you know, is something that takes practice, I think. And even practicing it on really small scale levels, you know, like, oh, we also offer this for half price, you know, and just being like, no.
Yes.
And then you practice saying no. I think
sometimes even in Boots, people will say, oh, you're buying a toothbrush, you can get another one free. And you just, they look at you like you're mad. But it's like,
I only have one set of teeth.
Yeah, but also the toothbrushes are all the way over there.
Yes, I've got to go back.
I can't be bothered.
Yeah, it's like, oh, no, it's fine.
Yeah,
no, it's
but
fine.
you feel bad because you're conditioned to say yes and to please. And was there, whenever you sort of felt like when you were writing your lecture, oh, this might be just pushing it a little bit far and I'll just pull back, and then finding the courage to really say what you wanted to say, was that something you grappled with in the working of it?
To be honest, my grappling is more like, Michaela, rein it in. Rein it in. Rein it in. Yeah, you know, like just calm down. You know,
Yes.
like maybe this is you know, this is just, you know, calm down, you know. So it's more about learning how to communicate with people, actually, and create a space where everybody feels safe. You know, I didn't want to make anyone feel unsafe, and I only want to be truthful. And if the truth is, for some people, a little bit shocking, that's not me wanting to shock. That's wanting me to tell. I want to tell the truth.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you talk about, you know, you need to sleep at night.
Yes, it makes me. I feel better having shared honestly. You know, that's my only selfish gain is a good night's sleep.
Yeah. Well, it's a precious commodity.
Yes, it is. It really is.
Many people do lie awake worrying and wondering, and what should I have said and what shouldn't I have said, and you know.
Oh my God, yeah.
To find that peace, though, is very, you know, is the route to wisdom, I think.
Yeah, and I still, you know, sometimes there'll be a little thing, I'll just be thinking, oh yeah, that thing, and I have to just text, hey, 3 years ago something happened, I just want to say I'm really sorry. And they're like, yeah, I don't remember that. Yeah. I've just got it off my chest now.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're like, thanks, I just managed to forget that through years
and
of
now
therapy.
I remember, you fucking bitch.
But one of the things you mentioned again in the lecture that made me have a little laugh to myself as a result of our trip to Kenya was all the things, the sort of British institutions in some respects, in terms of TV shows, whatever, that are very much in the British DNA, and how you didn't know them and you weren't aware of them, and we had this line.
Tell them the name of the game.
Yeah. The name of the game in Kenya was, you name it, Michaela hasn't heard of it. Where we were there with Reggie Yates and Hugh Dennis, David Baddiel, Russell Kane, myself and you. And I did call my husband after day 2 and I said, I don't think Michaela's heard of any of us.
Hi David, nice to meet you. Michaela, I didn't know.
Which was absolutely fine.
And now we've become like really good friends.
Yeah.
It was like...
But my husband was like, what, not even David Baddiel? I was like, nope. He was like, how's he taking it? Okay. And then we sat and had dinner, didn't we, about a week in, and you suddenly went,
Brilliant!
He was delighted and relieved, I think.
Relieved?
Yeah.
He was like intrigued, like, you don't know anything?
Yeah.
And then one day I was like,
it was just the most random, but
and that's my only reference as well, that's what I got.
But you were also talking, I think was really interesting on that trip as well, about how you hadn't, well, let me say, I, like probably a lot of people here, have grown up with comic relief. It's very much part of, they always feels like family, and the BBC and all of these sort of British institutions that we feel quite emotional about and protective of, afraid to criticise sometimes because we feel like we will contribute to a hostile environment, almost like treating them like some sort of special family member or a sacred cow, the sacred cows of British life. And what I think is one of the things that I found very exhilarating and exciting about being in your company, although terrifying at times, no, but in a great way, was that you don't have all that in you. You don't feel that. So you're able to look at these things very clearly, I think, with a very clear vision, and identify things that aren't going very well, and then just say them without all of this sort of, oh, well, no, obviously we're all very supportive and we'll all do this and we don't want to really criticise, but we don't. You just like, no, this is going wrong here and we need to sort this out. Yeah. And I think recently there's been all kinds of things like Oxfam, Save the Children, all these sort of things that everyone was worried about ever saying anything bad about, but actually has been used as a cover for things going very wrong underneath. And is that something that you're aware of in yourself, or is a sort of strange superpower to have in some ways?
It's almost like it's because I don't know anything about this industry, so I'd never seen Comic Relief, you know, and Reggie was like, I'm going to do this thing called Reach Wanna Come. I was like, oh, we're just going to go Africa, help some people? Yeah, sure. And then it's like, oh.
They're suddenly on a room and someone's giving birth.
Yeah, and you know what I mean? I'm like delivering a baby. What's going on? Like, there's blood all over me. You know?
Did Idris Elba do this?
Yeah, I'm like, has he done it before? I don't know, I haven't seen it. But yeah, no, and because I'm maybe... Yeah, that outside eye, which I think I mentioned in the lecture, there was many drafts, I'm not sure if it made the cut, but having an outside eye for yourself, you know, in terms of like therapy and people to talk to that have like a outside view, maybe it's that, you know, I'd never seen Comic Relief, you know, I just heard of the agenda, and then sometimes I was like, well, what's this bit about? You know, what is this? Why?
Yes, but I think as well as when you were talking about the TV industry as a whole yesterday, and the places where it's going wrong and the places where people need to try and fix things, to have that outside eye, even though you're very much part of it now in some ways. But you know, it's quite unusual to have someone who has become so successful so quickly and retained that outsider perspective, but also knows enough to know what's going wrong. And were you happy with, did you feel good about the response yesterday? Did you feel that people were taking what you were saying on board, or is it too early to say?
It's way too early to say. I mean, I don't know, you know, because...
I'm not suggesting we should go fix diversity overnight.
No, I mean, diversity, another word, I'm like, what?
Yes. What does it mean?
I don't know. I gave the speech, you know, the MacTaggart board were happy, but I then went to my mate's house because she lives in Edinburgh, and we chilled, you know, so I haven't... You
haven't processed it yet?
No.
But I think you seem very genuinely honoured to be delivering it.
Oh my God, yes. Because even just in doing it, it meant I had to think and research and call people, and because I didn't understand, it made me ask people why. And then when you realise other people haven't asked why, you realise that questions are really important. And that's what this allowed me to do. I'd never heard of the MacTaggart lecture. I'd never heard of James MacTaggart.
You name it.
Yeah. You know, and my agent was like, you know, they've asked you to do the MacTaggart, and I was like, hey, what's that? He was like, just do it. And then I was like, it's like a speech. I was like, sure. And then I assumed, you know, it's like a 5-minute speech, and then my agent was like, no.
What it is everybody in your world will be in one room.
And it's for 45 to 50 minutes. I was like, you never mentioned that, agent. But like, it had, I mean...
They shouldn't have left that to the night before.
No, but they know to me, you know what I mean? I was like, but that amount of time to say something means you have so much thinking to do. That's why I'm so, you know, I said in the speech, the urgency, it's instilled in me to learn. I learned so much, and I probably, because I'm writing my series, it meant, when did I begin this? When did I begin writing for this? Something like 2nd of August. And so it was really intense. Like, you know, I went away, you know, just to Somerset, and I was just like calling, you know, all the people I know in the industry, just like trying to work everything out. And I would not have been able to do that had I not been asked to do this.
It's like you went to really intense TV school.
For real, yeah.
And almost learnt the industry top to bottom to supplement what you've learnt through experience.
Yeah.
Has the process of the experience of making TV series, acting, writing, being involved in the producing, and now all this research that you've done intensively for the MacTaggart lecture, has it changed your ambition for yourself within the TV industry?
Well, the weird thing is, I mean, I have never had any, not only ambition in the TV industry, ambition. I'm just like, I'm the person, when you play Monopoly, I'm just happy to like, I'm not bothered to like play, you know?
Yes, yes.
So it's like I find myself, I enjoy storytelling.
I was used to, in a Monopoly, be relieved if I got a go to jail card, because it meant I could just relax for a bit.
Yeah, you can just chill, you know? It's like,
you've got to get out of jail free card there. Yeah, all right. I'm just going to let this go round.
Yeah, you know, like, and then even like my neighbours right now are really into playing poker, not for like money, just for like, I don't know, because I don't play. Because I'm like you know, that sounds like...
I think it's interesting, but it's interesting in terms of temperament, because something my dad always used to say is people generally are usually competitive or determined. And I think, you know, not one of the pleasures of being artistic or creative is you can often not have to be competitive, hopefully, and to be determined.
I'm definitely determined.
Yeah, to not measure yourself against other people or anything, but simply to set yourself a goal that only you define. You are entirely self-defining, and then to be determined to reach that.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think that contributes to how you've managed to stay sane and healthy, and that you're not comparing yourself to other people in the industry?
Never that. I mean, I'm like the story is my. I am determined to try and make the best stories I can at whatever point I'm at in my, you know, place in my brain, you know, and to try and make the best stories. I only recently, the last like 2 years, I've learned if I'm going to make a character, that these are, you know, you're trying to make people that other people believe could be real. So then I have to look at perspectives, because these characters aren't all me. So I have to go, okay, I'm writing this person, or maybe this is just the bad guy. And I'm like, but how did this person come to be this person? You know, is there such a thing as good and bad? You go perspectives, and I'm determined to make the best story. Then that means I'm determined to, that's a world. So I'm determined to see the world for the truth and actual like innocence and beauty that the world is. Sorry if I sound like a kooky, like creative.
No,
you know, I'm just like...
That's right. I think you should sound exactly like that.
Yes, because it permeates into everything. It permeates into who you work with, and you go, there isn't a good or bad guy. You go, where are you? What happened to you? And when you came into this industry, you know, you wanted to tell stories, didn't you? And now you're this person in this place with all this noise. Where were you when you came? How are you now? What's the difference between, you know, what changed? When did that begin? And then you have to then, I want to encourage people to look at their lives and their careers and how they feel now, you know, because I don't think we're allowed that space to ask ourselves, you know, especially when you go to, you know, the head CEO, blah, 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 blah. You don't get that chance. And I really want to encourage people to have that. The one thing you're entitled to is that space to ask yourself questions and seek answers. So.
But sometimes people are frightened of the answers.
Yeah.
And what the answers may mean, the implications of the answers.
Yes, and then that is also awesome, because the implications may mean you may have been a little bit wrong. Then you go into this space where it's like, oh, now I'm like, it's a bit clearer. And that's more comfortable.
Have you, when you've been asking yourself the deepest questions about what you want and who you want to be and what you want out of life and your career, have you come up against answers for yourself, particularly in the last 5 years since you've really become very successful by some definitions? Have you had answers that you don't like initially, or that you're frightened of, or that intimidate you? Yes,
and I think one of the things where, you know, when I talk about our house, this industry, what I guess I became clearer of, or I'm becoming clearer of what my role is in this industry. I love telling stories, but in terms of the misfits, you know, which once again I will say crosses concepts of gender, of race, of everything, I want this process of entering the house and finding your role in what, you know, part are you fixing, what wall are you painting. I want the process to be easier for other people. I really do. And that is really it. for me.
I think what you're defining is something really important, which is that if everybody is individually themselves asking themselves honestly the questions they need to ask, and then having the courage and the curiosity to deal with the answers,
yes,
collectively we will all improve.
Yes.
But we have to build space into how we work and how the industry works.
And courage.
To let people do that.
Yes.
To have that time.
Yes, yeah. And, you know, I was thinking about it this morning, and I was describing this kind of it's like a boogie monster, this thing that makes us feel like we can't talk about things or do things. It's like this boogie monster, it's a fucking boogie monster. It's not real. Like, you know, we can. Why not? Why not? That's the question. And then if we ask ourselves why not, we discover a boogie monster. It's not even there, you know.
Yes.
Oh, this, you know,
it's not even there.
Yeah.
And just finally, you talked about this house and that this is not my house, and brilliantly illustrated the reminder of the foundation that was too pale for anyone other than the most Nordic of backgrounds.
Oh, you're right.
But what this is not my house. Do you feel, and I hope in some ways you do, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. Do you feel a little bit that you have a part of this house now?
100%. That's why, you know, at the end I say I want to play whatever part I can in helping fix this house. It's definitely, and that's why I get to like the 95%. This is actually, we're all here as misfits. We are all, or we were at one stage, misfits. When did we find ourselves blending for a feeling of safety, you know? And it's about stepping back from that and going back to your, you know, how do you feel? What are your morals? How do you operate? Are you in line with that when you go to work? You know, if we do consider this a house, think about how your house runs a home, you know, your real house. It's all metaphorical, you know, and we are part of this house, and I'm definitely a part of this house, and I want to help.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's a great place to end.
Boom.
Thank you ever so much, Michaela.
Pleasure. Thank you, guys.